welcome Mary McDonough and Judy Norton to Tongue Tied Ride and Tie Interviews. You are here today because of work you did when you were on the show The Waltons, and one of those episodes featured Ride and Tie. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. One of the subplots on that particular episode was a young Jeffrey wrote to a Hollywood actress that he really liked, and she wrote back, and he was so excited. And then he got to meet her in person, and that was so exciting. And I kind of feel like Jeffrey today. We've emailed back and forth a little bit, and now I get to be with you in person. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Well, Judy has this wonderful YouTube channel, and you have lots of recollections and reminiscences from the Waltons. And one of the things you do on there is talk about your co-stars. And so I thought it might be fun today if each of you would introduce the other, kind of like you do on your YouTube channel. And so Judy, if you don't mind, if you'll start and introduce Mary, and then Mary, if you will introduce Judy, so we'll know both of you from way back and you from what you're doing now.
Okay, so I guess I have to be circumspect so that when Mary introduces me, it's not payback.
But I'll be nice.
Well, Mary is incredibly talented in many areas of her life, and I first met Mary when we were both very young. She was and will always be younger than I am. She'll always be my little sister.
Yes.
But we met when we were filming The Homecoming in 1971. So Mary has been a part of my life since then. And she is like a real sister to me. She has had a tremendously prolific acting career. And, you know, has besides all the years that we spent together on the Waltons, she's done numerous other TV shows and movies and TV movies. And then she has a second career, very successful career as a writer. And she's wonderful. I've read a number of her books, and it always amazes me. I'm always, how does she do that? I mean, I write scripts and I doodle around, but to like a whole book, you know, with all the right words and all the right grammar and all. Like, how do you do that?
Well, I don't know about that.
I sit in front of a script and go, wow, maybe 100 blank pages. And Mary sits and goes, maybe 400 blank pages. Anyway, so she is like a sister in real life. And we have shared many, many experiences, some of which we'll cover. But I love her dearly. And this is Mary McDonough.
Wonderful.
Yay. Thank you. That's too kind, sissy. But yes, and so
and didn't cover the majority of your life, but there you go. We have
okay. So we have time. So, and then I'll introduce you to my sister Judy. Yes, it's Judy Norton. Sounds so official. But yeah, I was 10 when I met her. We were doing the Homecoming, and for many, many years we shared a dressing room, and with Cammie, who played Elizabeth. So the three of us girls really became like sisters from a very, very young and early age. And I always looked up to Judy because she was, she was the tomboy. She was smart. She was sassy. She was wise. She was powerful. And I always felt so wimpy. Like I'm the little sister. I don't do anything. And she does all these things. So, and then we evened out in our ages where we were sort of similar. I think we were kind of on the same playing field. And then we got really, really close. We even took a cruise together during one of our hiatuses on the show. And we have had a lot of adventures that we won't talk about today. But we've had a lot of adventures. And the great news is that we still are having adventures all the time. So people always ask us, are you really that close? And like, we actually are. We vacation together. That's how close we are. And Judy, when people always say, oh, you write, but isn't John Boy the writer? Well, one of the things about Judy is that not only is she just my sister and I love her, and she's beautiful and kind and compassionate and caring, and she has a great ear. So when you have a problem, she really listens to you, and she gives great advice, and she's really smart and all of that. But like, people always say, oh, Jason's the musician. Well, that's not always like me being a writer. Judy is a wonderful entertainer and a fabulous singer. And she has a great CD or two or three. How many do you have now, Judy?
Two.
Two. She's got two CDs that you can order. One is Christmas themed. And we actually have three, also the Walton Christmas CD. So order it, and it's wonderful. And she's great. And I like, you know,
and I don't even pay her to do this.
No, so everybody thinks, oh, Jason is the musician and the singer, but not really. He is. John does do all of those things, but so does Judy. And sometimes we have been lucky enough to have them perform together. It's very rare, but she's great and wonderful, and she's a really good mom. But best of all, she's a great big sister.
Oh.
So. I think that leave it. And she acts and she produces it. Like she said, she writes scripts and she's directed theater and she's lived in different places in the world and still, you know, and has a fabulous life. And so I'm just lucky to call her sister.
Well, I'm just a few years younger than you, just a very few years younger than the two of you. So
you're Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Jim Bob.
There you go. So I grew up though watching you watching the Waltons, but I didn't discover Riding Tie until just about a decade ago. And just a couple of years ago, a friend of mine said, I was watching reruns of the Waltons and Riding Tie was on there. And I said, there's no way. And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, and got that episode and have enjoyed it so much. And so we're going to talk now about the episode, The Wager. In the episode, it's called Run and Ride, not Ride and Tie. But and I think Judy, you may have had something to do with that getting on the show. But if you guys will just share with me what you remember about that episode, how it came to be, and the way you filmed it, and all the things that you can remember about that episode. And let's just enjoy hearing you reminisce some.
Well, it might be the episode Mary took a while to forgive me for, if she has yet.
No!
It was clearly all my fault. I started writing because of a costumer on our show. One of our costumers, when I was 15, Linda had ridden her whole life, and we became friends. She showed me pictures of her competing in jumping with her horses. And I just thought that was so cool. All these, you know, her like over fences and with ribbons. And I was like, oh, how cool is that? And I was always interested in horses, but had only ridden maybe birthday parties when you go and you rent a horse and go on a trail ride. But I always thought it was cool. And so she took me out to a horse show one time, which I thought was just fabulous. And then she invited me out to get on her horse. And it's a funny thing about horses. You can think you can ride until you get on a horse that is very trained, and then you feel like you know nothing. And that was sort of me. I'm like, oh yeah, anybody can ride. And I got on this horse and I couldn't get it to do anything because I wasn't giving it any of the right signals. But I was just fascinated. So because of that, I started taking riding lessons, and she would literally take me out to the stables because I couldn't drive yet. And sometimes my mom would. And I started learning to ride and to jump at the same time, because that was it was a 100-jumper barn. So that's what we did. And I wanted to learn that. And so by the time we got to, I think it was season 9 when we did that episode. It
was later on.
And somehow I think I had heard about Ride and Tie, and certainly our producers Rod and Claire knew that I rode, and they created the storylines of Mary Ellen being a nurse and riding a horse back up into the back country to treat the patients up there. So I did get to do some riding on the show, and that developed into this concept of doing this run and ride race. And so I needed a partner, and so they created a storyline, and poor Erin got roped to being my partner for that Ride and Tie run and ride race.
I'm so ahead of its time, right? So I was looking up. So here's the thing, like, Courtney, you made me do a lot of work for this interview because I have not seen this episode. what do I remember? Well, so I looked at the script, and so it was actually written, it has 3 writing credits. One is Earl Hamner, one is Ernie Wallengren, and the other one is Clayleen Jones. Did you know that, Judy?
Did not remember that. No.
So I would think that Rod and Claire definitely had a hand in it as well, because I think he would have known that, with his Western experience. So, so interesting that happened. And then, and how ahead of its time, as the Waltons usually is, with so many of the topics and things that we did on the show, that, 2 women. And of course, we were in World War II at the time. So, they were showing all different ways that women were moving forward and stepping into areas of responsibility. Erin worked at the defense plant with J.D. Pickett. So during the war, yes, as you said, with the history of women, working in defense plants, and certainly the run and ride race that they had us do, that's sort of way ahead of its time. And here we are, all these years later, and now the women who recently won. So my experience on horses, I rode all the time, but Western, just as a girl, like Judy said, birthday parties. And then my dad would take us out with the neighborhood kids, and we would just rent, what random horse, and then just be running around. Of course, the best ride you had was when it turned around and it went back to it knew it was going home, back to the barn.
But then you could get some speed out of the horse.
Exactly.
But very little steering.
So very little steering, and none of the mechanics of. I did a commercial years later where I was, they actually trained me a little bit in equestrian for this, because it was on the streets of San Francisco, and I was a mounted officer. And just in case it got frightened, or they just wanted to make sure that if it started to run up and down the streets of San Francisco in the hills, that I could stop it. But that's the only official training I ever had, but it was way after this. Yeah. Otherwise, I was just, hold on to the horn, take the strap, and go. So no real training at all. So, but Judy, you can tell when you look at you and that you have proper training on how to ride because of your positioning.
Although all my training was English, so whenever I get into a Western saddle, I feel a little like a fish out of water because I'm less comfortable in a Western saddle. It's a different balance. It's a different seat. It's just different, particularly the jump saddle. And I did learn very fast because we did jump over this log at one point on the ground, and I learned very fast that one does not lean forward in the same way in a Western saddle over a fence as you want to do in an English saddle. So I'm like, oh, note to self, do not impale yourself on that horn. Because you're always with jumping, that sweet spot between following the horse's motion, not getting left behind. So you're falling backwards as you're jumping, but not getting, the whole point of getting out of the saddle is so that you do not impede the horse's ability to use their body the way they need to jump. So it's all about following the motion. So there were any number of things, and it was, it was tremendous fun for me to. I've always said it, not that I thought it was the best episode the Waltons did, but it was the most fun for me to film because I got to show up at work and get on a horse and ride all day. So that was heaven. It's like, this is great. I get to do things I love.
So no stunt riders. You did all your own stunts in that episode.
We did. The other teams, who were Sam and Jeb, had whatever degree of riding experience they had. So they were a team, but the other 3 or 4 teams in the race were stunt riders. And that's pretty evident by the team that actually wins the race. Clearly very experienced stunt riders. And they did various episodes of our show as stunt people.
So they, okay. So because they obviously were really good.
Yeah, yeah. And so we didn't actually win the race, but the whole premise was that we get goaded into having a wager with these two guys that work at the defense plant.
Right. And Jonathan Banks played Jeb Sanders, who I was with more often, right? And then Mitch Carter played Sam Barker.
Yeah. And so at the defense plant, Erin places a wager with, because we had signed up. I signed us up at Ike's store. I saw the sign and went, oh, let's do this. And then we were getting sort of goaded by these two men.
They were
yeah, just very
typical toxic masculinity stuff, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, women can't do it. Yeah. And so they play, so independent of each other, a wager. Erin made one with Jeb, and I can't remember what your wager was, what you two bet each other.
Courtney, what was my wager?
Wages. Yeah.
Okay.
Erin's was a week's wages, and then Mary Ellen's was for the horse.
I know mine was my horse.
Yeah.
I bet my horse, and I don't remember what he bet.
I think he bet his horse.
And then, okay. Yeah, it's funny. We never ended up with another horse around there that we saw. But then animals were always.
But then we didn't win the overall race, right? So was it? It was just us.
No, but it was which one of our teams is ahead of the other. That they were going to beat us, we were going to beat them. So I think that was a nice, realistic sort of ending, where it wasn't trying to say in this short period of time that we were good enough to win the whole race, but collectively we beat the two of them by a hair as Erin raced in on foot at the end
the runner.
And came to a grinding halt that you could see a mile away. I thought that was so funny. It's like she's running and then she's like, oh, I got to stop fast because here's my mark for the camera.
Yeah, like runner does that. Yeah. But all right.
Exactly.
Well, so the rest of it was real because we did all these stunts. Okay. So here's my thing about this whole thing. Always showing up when the producers would have these ideas of, oh, Judy, you ride horses. Let's put you going back up into the backcountry and treating people as a nurse. Oh, Mary, we think you're funny. We're going to have you dress up as Scarlett O'Hara. Like, what? Wait, what? Have I been Scarlett O'Hara in my life? No. Judy actually rides a horse. That's like dignified and lovely. And then they come up and go, oh, and you get to be in a beauty contest. What? I don't do a beauty contest in my life. What? Yeah, you get to wear a bathing suit next week. What? So when they came in with this horse idea, it was pitched to me like, Judy is going to do all the riding. You don't have to worry. You're not really going to have to be on the horse very much. I'm like, okay, well then, sure. And I can run. That's good. We can do that. So, but no, I'm on that horse.
Oh yeah.
And yes, and that you had to do the tailing thing.
Oh, I know.
Which I had never heard of, and I was horrified. I know enough about horses to go, I've been kicked. I don't want to be behind the horse. And to literally get on the horse's butt and grab the tail and get pulled up a hill. I was, yes, enough of a chicken to say, I'm glad Mary's the one who has to be on the ground and I'm just riding.
And every day it was a new adventure. Like, okay, so where am I running today? Oh no, today you're going to run up this hill and Judy's going to be 3 inches near you on a giant horse and you get to grab the tail and continue to run up the hill. Like, what? What happened to I'm just running? like, and then every day something new happened. One of the other things that happened was in Franklin Canyon, right? They had the beginning. So the beginning of the race, who's on the horse? Me. Like, what? Why am I on the horse? So, and this was horrifying. I almost died here. Everybody's lined up. And it's literally out in Oh, it's probably like what? It was like two football field, Judy. Like it was a pretty big
Oh
space,
yeah.
but there were like 40 horses or more, right?
Oh, didn't I
So,
thought we did the start? Did we not do the start on the back lot, or we just did the finish?
oh, the starting back. So this was like maybe just them filming the ride, but there were like a lot of horses, and they had us all lined up at the beginning, and then everybody took off.
Okay.
So it may have been just to get a shot of lots of different shots
fast because there wasn't any room on the back lot to do a shot like
right
that.
to do a shot like that. And it was a wide shot, so you would never have known if it wasn't me, but it was me. And I'm on this and there's like chaparral and there's brush and bushes and stuff on the ground, and so it wasn't. And so they're like, everybody's just going to run straight, and they had like cameras in different areas, but we were like running towards camera, and they somehow fired something so everybody would start running, and so the horse just takes off, and I am holding onto that horn for dear life. And then where one of these bushes is, there was a huge crevice, a divot, like probably, like it must have been like 3 feet wide.
Wow.
My horse fell into it and fell forward. And if I had not, because I know you're not supposed to hold on to the horn, but everybody was going so fast, and the horse just took off. And if I had not been holding on, so I got thrown forward. And the only thing that saved me is that I had the reins, but I was holding onto the horn for dear life. So I fell forward with the horse. And then luckily he didn't continue to fall. He found his way with forward momentum, but we were going down. I was like, there's that. It was really scary. And I fell forward so fast that the horn hit me like in my ribs, in my gut.
Yeah.
And it was pretty scary. It was, and so, but then the horse recovered, which was great. And we did the shot, and I was like, okay, we're not doing that again. And I thought, holy cow, for it to just fall in this ditch. So I was as prepared as I could have been, but I think I was a pretty good sport about it. I mean, we did it. I mean, like, I saw Jonathan Banks. We had both worked for this other company. He was doing a television series, and I had done a movie of the week for them. So for Stephen Cannell. And so we're at this party years later. And of course, he's this big star now. And so I went up to him and I was like, hey, you probably don't remember me. He's like, oh, those horses. I said, yeah. He says, oh, one of the most horrifying jobs of my life. I said, oh my gosh, really? And he said, well, yeah, I mean, I'm a young actor, right? And they tell you, like, you go in there and they ask you, like, can you roller skate? Sure, I can roller skate. He said, so they said, have you ever been around horses? Sure, I've been around horses. And they said, do you ride? Yeah, I ride a little. And he said, I did not ride. I did not ride. And so I think his experience was even worse than mine. And he goes, but you always say that as an actor, that you can do anything. Yeah. And then you get the job and you feel like you're probably going to have a stunt person. But no. So yeah. I'm sure it was
four actors. We all did our own writing. And I know, Courtney, you asked if I would share that story about that race sequence.
Yeah.
Because it was definitely challenging. I mean, as you know, Mary, that, the horse could move.
Yeah.
And so we were out in Franklin Canyon because we needed, more open area to shoot some of those sequences. And so there was this long sort of stretch of open ground, and they wanted Sam and I neck and neck on the horses, and they had a camera car. So they had this sort of with the camera mounted on that was right next to us. And they wanted a tight 2-shot of me and Sam both on our horses, but they wanted Sam to be just slightly ahead of me. So we're like racing neck and neck towards the finish. Well, his horse was faster, was not as fast as the horse I was riding. Or because he wasn't as experienced a rider, he wasn't necessarily getting the speed out of it, but I was letting the camera track Sam's horse because that was the one that was supposed to be in the lead. And then I felt like my job was to keep my horse just about a head behind.
That's
So
hard.
they could keep this two shot happening. My horse could have outrun that horse. So I was, and if you look back at that, it's like I was like up on the horse's neck and I had those reins and I was holding that horse to keep it within proximity to his horse while trying to look like I was trying to urge the horse forward. So it was, they would have had no idea that was not an easy thing to do or something that probably any of the other actors involved in this segment done. So it was just, they were smart enough that, because that was probably the trickiest thing of all the actual horse things that any of the actors had to do, because most of the rest of the time it was like a wider shot, or there were some, stop here type stuff that was a little trickier with a horse. But yeah.
But they're lucky they had you and your expertise, because it could have been really, really dangerous. And that shot it's like an action movie. It looks really like it's fast and there's speed. And we didn't do a lot of that kind of stuff on the show. So they're just lucky that we all lived through it. And they had you, Judy, because you're good.
You can always tell when it's the stunt person because it's a longer shot, or all you're not seeing the person's face. You're seeing the body of the horse and the body of the person, and they're in tight and this thing's moving. And, I'm always looking to see who's actually riding and who's not. And I can tell by body language and position and all kinds of things. But, most of the time when they get in close on actors, you can't see the horse, and the rhythm at which the person's moving for the fake shot doesn't look real if you look at real horse and rider motion. So there was none of that. There was no faking, we're just going to do the close-up view and pretend. No, everybody was actually on those
animals. You can tell. And you guys are close to the camera. It's very action-packed. It's like, were you nervous at all?
No. I really wasn't. I was glad that I didn't have to do the tailing thing, but I guess if I'd had to, I would have found out maybe it wasn't as horrifying as I thought. I don't know. Was it, Mary, as horrifying as you thought?
I think it's like when you're in this situation, I remember the wrangler that we had when I was a kid, and the cow would poop. He would say, put your feet in it and let it squish through your toes. It's the best feeling in the world. I was like, what? Ew. And luckily I didn't believe him and do that because I'm so gullible. But I think when we were doing this, when they came and they said, here's what you're going to do, and this is going to happen, and you're just going to grab that thing. And it was like, oh, okay. We weren't really trained on the show to say no a lot.
Right.
I don't think that we were really allowed to say no. So and then of course everybody's there, and there's the pressure of like, you've got a camera crew, we're in a, there's a hill there, we're on location, time is of the essence, and somebody tells you just do something and you just do it. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to trust that this is going to work. But so I was nervous every time, like, because every day there's a new adventure for Mary with a horse.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be in a race, so you're always trying to make it look like you're looking to carry as much speed as possible. So it was, you weren't kind of, we'll have this all be nice and controlled and everything. No, it was meant to look wild and on the edge.
And you definitely pulled it off. It was a great episode, and it really captures Ride and Tie in lots of ways. The preparation that it shows you guys doing, the jumping jacks and all, you have to do a lot of, you got to condition your body as well as the horse. The ending is just perfect, because even though you're going in your race, it was to be a 12-mile race. Most Ride and Tie races are a little longer, 25, 30, even 50 or 100. But it's amazing how often at the end of a 30-mile race, it comes down to those last few yards, and you have these kind of photo finishes. And
Crazy.
so you got that just absolutely right. Did it take longer to film than a normal episode of the Waltons because of all the horse? Nope.
No, I mean, I don't think they gave us any extra time. So it was really up to the director to figure out how to keep those things moving along. So there was no time for us to be worried or not do it. Which maybe
that's why when they say grab the horse's tail and run up the hill with it, you go, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was no time to say, oh, I'm worried, or let me practice. It was, you just had to do it.
And so are most of the shots just the first take? You didn't need to do a second take?
I think it depended on whether the camera got it. It was pretty much always about, did the camera get what they needed more than did the actor feel comfortable with what happened.
Did Mary not get kicked by the horse?
Yeah. Well, you didn't get injured during the, did you? I didn't think so.
No, especially not on that. And actually what was interesting about it was that what I do remember that you're just sort of like, it's a Zen thing, right? Somebody comes and says, just do this. And they give you like 4 directions, like stand here, when you see this, grab it, and just, and it will pull you up. And it actually, what I was surprised is that it actually did help me get up the hill. So it was kind of surprising that it worked.
Because a horse can't, if a horse is going uphill, they're having to use their hind end, so they can't be kicking and maintaining their balance going up a hill at the same time. And a hill will slow them down. So the motion where the tail is relative to.
And tailing is a part of riding tie, although
you let go when you're at the top.
I was going to say tailing is a part of riding tie, although the rule is you're not actually allowed to tail your own horse. If an opponent lets you, you can tail with them, but because the idea is that the horse provides the motivation or the ride for the one person, not for both. But still, I'm really glad they got in there, because we don't do a lot of it, but it's a part of it, and it really can help when you go up a hill to have that horse kind of pulling you along. So
yeah, and I can see how an opponent wouldn't want to be helping you get up that hill. So.
No, and it's funny. Sometimes we really can be cutthroat competitors out there, but lots of times we're just out there having fun. And if it's a tough hill, somebody may say, if you want to tail, you can tail, my horse and whatnot. So yeah. Well,
and to have the timing of those moments sync up like that for for Mary Ellen to have caught up with Erin at exactly that point to be able to help her up the hill.
No, that's pretty common too, though. You're constantly coming back and forth with your partners, so you have all these little 2-second meetings. You want to keep going, you want to stop. The other slight difference with ride and tie from the episode is ride and tie doesn't have predetermined checkpoints where you tie. You just tie wherever you want to. So there's a lot of strategy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
do they have checkpoints for the horses, or because it's not long enough, do they still monitor the horses?
They do. So you'll do a loop, maybe a 10 or 12 mile loop, and you come in and a vet checks the horses. And we always tease about nobody checks the runners, but the vet checks the horses. And if the horse is good enough, they can go back out, of course. So
they figure the people, if you're stupid enough to keep going when you're not well, that's on you.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Well, let's shift. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. And I was just wondering, so if you can tie off anywhere, so it's not predetermined. So, but then how does that prevent one person like Judy from having to ride a lot farther, or does that enable her to? I should say, how is it? How do people make it fair? So there's this, or can one person stay on the ride longer?
So there's a lot of strategy. You're required to make 6 switches during a race, but it's up to you as to how and when you do that. And as a matter of fact, so if you have a better runner, you may want that runner on the ground more. And so the rider may say, I'm going to ride for a mile or 2 miles, and then you get on the horse and come catch me, and then I'll run further or whatever. But oddly, typically most teams switch about every half a mile, and that gives both the horse a chance to rest and the runner. Once you get your horse and get on it, you're kind of resting on the horse a little bit. And so a 30-mile race, we may switch 60 times.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So,
Huh.
I'm just so thankful for your time, and I want to be conscious of that. But I do want to shift to reflect a little bit about some wider themes that I think both the wager picks up on and Riding Tie picks on up on. And in the actually even the voiceover at the beginning of the wager, it talks about how women in the war were coming into their own, finding that they could compete and work with men on their own terms, and things were changing. And I think Judy mentioned that a while ago as well. And riding tie is such a wonderfully egalitarian sport, and the wager demonstrates that, because part of the reason that you were able to beat the two guys, the male chauvinists, was you trained and you got ready, and they're sitting out by the bank fishing and eating popcorn, and y'all are out training. And that makes a difference. And so I have been soundly beaten by a number of women teams, and it's because they've been better trained than me, and their horse was faster than mine, or whatever. The thing I really love about riding tie isn't so much the competition between men and women, but the fact that I get to compete with men and women. And one of my partners, primary partners, is a woman, and one of my primary partners is a man. And then I get to compete with other people, other teams that are either women or men or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just so delightful. And so last year, as you referenced a little while ago, Judy, we had the 50th anniversary of the Riding Ties World Championship. And
Wow.
that race was won by a woman team. And I kind of like your team on the wager, because one of the women was a experienced riding tire. I think they both were experienced riders. The other one had not done, I don't know if she'd ever done a riding tie before, so it was new to her. But
Wow.
they came in and won it. And not only were both of the humans female, but the horse was too. And that is the first time in riding tie history that it was an entirely all female team. And they really, yes, indeed. For it to be the 50th was really fun and neat too.
That's cool.
So share with me a little bit. Pardon me?
You did raise the point, like even in the Olympics, the equestrian events are the only event in the Olympics where men and women compete equally. So it's not like any other sport where there's the women's division and the men's division. So they consider that the horse is the equalizing factor that makes it possible for a man or a woman to compete equally. So I always loved that about riding. And what is interesting is that, yes, as younger, in every barn I've ridden out of, and the low level of competition that I've done a little bit of competing, but just at very small local shows, was predominantly women. But what's interesting is by the time you get to the higher elite levels, how many men, that it's more male dominated. So I'm like, where do all these men come from? Because they've never been around the barns where I ride. So is there some little hidden enclave that like trains all the men? Is there some country or some state or some barns where all the men congregate, and all of a sudden you get up to the elite levels and there's all these men that came out of the woodwork? So I don't know how that is or why that is, but
So are you still competing right now, Mary? I mean, Judy? Not Mary.
I have not. I mean, I still ride. I still have a horse, and I still, but I do it really pretty much for fun. I always felt that I competed when I was first riding in the first like 10 or 12 years that I rode, and I did do some horse shows, but then I pretty much got back into it just for my own enjoyment. I'm considering this. I came up in the hunter jumper world, and since I moved a couple of years ago, and I'm at a barn now that does 3-day eventing. So it's really the first time I have dug into more of the dressage work and actually jumped a few cross-country course, fences and stuff like that, but have not. And I'm interested in going and doing some training in that area, but will I do some low-level training show? I don't know. I'll decide. I ride for fun. I'm like, my life, my business is competitive enough. I don't know that I need to do that for fun.
Yeah.
Is that fun? Because I get really nervous when I compete, within the horse world, because it's not my comfort zone in terms of competition.
Well, let me invite you, both of you, to consider reprising your role and come do a ride and tie. I
Oh my
promise, if you can find one where y'all are close to the site, where we can find a good, well-trained ride and tie horse, and y'all can do it, that would be a lot of fun. Y'all ought to think about it.
Oh my gosh, that should be like it would have to be a show, right?
The senior, the senior ride and tie race. And maybe only a couple of miles.
Well, we can do that
Exactly.
too. We have shorter races, so that's good. So let me just focus out one more time, and then we'll quit, because I really do want to ask you a little bit. You talked about you kind of in some ways grew up on the Waltons, and it was a show that was ahead of its time a little bit. How did that help you as women in your later career?
In so many ways. Judy, if you want to jump in, we had incredible female writers and producers on the show. So we were always, I mean, of course, there was Earl, and it was his show and his family and his baby. But Earl was really great about embracing different writers for different types of storylines, and then hiring them as producers. Yeah. So I was hugely influenced by Claire Whitaker, and she was just a fabulous producer and a wonderful writer and a wonderful woman. And so I think that we had a great role models. We also had, in the actresses around us, we had very powerful women in Michael and certainly in Ellen Corby. So we had great role models of strong women around us in so many different ways. And then when we started to portray that era, that time in the war, well, as I said before, Erin worked for J.D. Pickett, who was, another toxic male, but and was up against all the challenges that a woman trying to get ahead at that time faced. And so she had to deal with all of that. And of course, it rubbed off on me as a person as well. And my mother, while she never would have ever called herself a feminist, she was very much about like, do your own life and then don't get married, and then travel and don't get married, go to school and don't get married, and then have a career and then maybe think about getting married. So my mom was, so in ways they coincided and made me fiercely independent, and my daughters are very fiercely independent as well. So the show was a huge influencing factor on how I think all of us turned out, don't you, Judy?
Yeah, I think from one of the other factors that I feel played into it was because we started working so young.
Yeah, right.
Regularly, just like full time. I was 14 when we started the series. So from 14, I was working full time. And I think that puts you into a different path than the normal go to school, go to college, spend however long figuring out and changing your mind about what you're going to do. And, I know so many young people who my son's just about to finish school, and he's not exactly sure what his transition is going to be into the real world. And so many people that I know that got a degree, and that's not the field they went into. They're not working in the field that their degree was in. So to have that opportunity to go into and experience the working world, and also as an actor, it's another field where you are on equal footing, and as a child you're on equal footing. Usually children are treated differently in the film industry. Aside from regulations about school and how many hours you can work, you're expected to, you have all the same responsibilities, male, female, child, adult, whatever, to be there and be prepared and do the work and be professional. So it was never a focus of, are you a child? Are you a female? Are you young? It was all of that was just, you're a person and these are your responsibilities. And you saw that exemplified across the board between cast and crew and the production office and all of that. There was never, we might have had times when we felt like we were maybe discriminated against a bit because we were children, but not because we were female. So it was a different
Mhm.
road. So you had challenges. You saw those life challenges of overcoming obstacles because someone might not respect your opinion because you were young, but not because, oh, you're a girl or you can't do this.
Yeah.
Because every day we were proving we could do it, and we were
Yeah.
watching people, as Mary said, great role models doing that.
Super.
Yeah, we were surrounded by them, but there was also the expectation that you, even though you were a kid, the expectation was you behave and train and perform as an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did brilliant storylines that were ahead of the time, and certainly ahead of the time for the period the Waltons was in, the Depression,
Yes.
the War too. So we were representing so many themes and so many progressive aspects of life that we were still just barely touching on in real life. So that was great because, again, you're in your formative years, and your examples of the scripts and the things that you're playing and the circumstances that you are representing are empowering. So that was, I think, we weren't playing victims, and we were all, everybody in the Waltons, although we had different personalities and different paths that each character took, there was always that theme of support, and you can do this, and you should pursue your dreams, and it doesn't matter whether it's the typical path or not. Mary Ellen was really the first one who went down that. I mean, John Boy, because being a writer was so alien to as a career, but then Mary Ellen had the thing of, yes, being a nurse or a doctor for a woman, the double combo of going into a career and pursuing it as a woman.
Well, I can't say this for sure, but my guess is that part of my love for strong women, I'm married to a strong woman. I have a daughter who's a strong woman. They're the ones that got me into riding ties, as a matter of fact, came from things like the Waltons, teaching me at a very young, early age that those incredibly important lessons. And so I'm thankful to you and to the writers for that influence that I really do feel like that you've had on my life. Having strong women in my life, like you said, great role models also has been a great thing for me as well. Well, thank you so much for your time, and this has just been delightful. You may want to kill me when I do this, but the only way I know to end this interview is to say good night, Judy, and good night, Mary.
Good night, Courtney.